What's going on, everyone? It's Mike back again, and yeah, this is a multi-video talking about a few facets of what is going on at Everton Football Club right now, and players we've been linked with. We've been linked with a lot. We've been linked with some decent players, young players, talented players, to be fair. I think there's a few things that we need to discuss. But we're going to start with the game yesterday. Obviously, it was a pre-season friendly, 0-0 with Bolton. Again, in the first half, we played some quite nice stuff. Certainly to Dwight McNeil. He looks like he's going to be really promising for next season. I would argue he's head and shoulders probably our best player. And you know, I mentioned this last season. It was a waste of time having him playing at left back. It was a waste of time because it nullifies his threat. He's a great ball carrier. He can beat people. I actually think he looks quicker. And there was times last night where he was beating people. He got a lovely shot off after beating about 3 or 4 people. You know, there was a couple of lovely passes out wide from Dobbin into his feet, or you know, he was coming short to pick up the ball and turning, and that's exactly what we've missed. If I'm being honest, we've missed that player who's got that little bit of guy or a little bit of creativity, and we certainly lacked it at times last season. And under Dyche, he's completely changed. He's completely changed. He just looks a different proposition, and I'm quite looking forward to seeing what he can produce next season. I really am. And I also think as well, I wonder if he could step up. You know, I'm wondering if this is a kid that can, you know, prove a point, because I mentioned it a few times last season about players proving a point. You know, maybe have been wrote off, and I wrote him off. You know, when we signed him, certainly up until about December, I was writing this kid off. I was saying, look, 1 goal, 1 assist in a season where Burnley got relegated. The season before, I think he'd done a bit better, and the season before that, he'd been linked with Manchester United for 35 million. But it wasn't particularly promising. He came into that Everton side, and straight off the first game, the 1-0 win against Arsenal, he looked really composed. He played on that left-hand side. He was tracking back. He was carrying the ball. He was defending well, but he was always available on the turn to go at Arsenal. And he sort of hasn't really stepped back off that. I'd say that he gives you solid 6, 7 out of 10 every game. And when Everton, let's be honest, have been performing at times last season and even in this pre-season at sort of 3s, 4s and 5s, he's always looked fairly consistent. He's always looked like he could cause threats. So I'm really happy with Dwight McNeil. Obviously, we saw some players as well that had come back into the starting 11 for the first time in a long time. Andre Gomez looked neat and tidy on the ball. Obviously, he's not a bad player. He had a good season last season, but I do think the Premier League's just too quick for him. But either way, he was composed on the ball. There was a couple of misplaced passes, but nothing particularly scary. And I'm not saying I want to keep him, because I don't. And I do think there's a saleable asset in there, albeit it's nowhere near the money we paid for him. But if you could get something for him, I don't think it's a bad move. It's good to play him, to keep him in the shop window. I don't think he'll be an Everton player at the end of the summer. But I also don't think under Dyche it would be the worst thing in the world. He is a passer, as in he slows the game down and he does try to pick a ball through the channel. He can carry a ball. He does have that moment of brilliance. It's not an horrendous player to have in your team, albeit there's a lot of players like that at Everton. You know, I was reading some statistics on Iwobi. Iwobi runs his socks off, yeah, credit where credit's due, but he scored 12 goals in 100-odd games, or 6 goals in 100-odd games, and he's got 11 assists. Last season was his best in terms of assists for Everton, but, you know, is he the player that will take us forward? I'm on the fence about it, you know, and while you've got teams like Crystal Palace who have been clever and signed younger players from the Championship over years, and you've got players like Michael Elise and Eze, Everton don't really seem to do that. You know, Jared Bowen was another one at West Ham. Everton just don't do that. And there seems to be like a mind block Now, one area that we are looking and we clearly are trying to strengthen is up front. Albin Toure looks like he's going to be going to Atalanta. Everton apparently had agreed the fee at least, probably offered more money, but I think European football and probably playing for a team that's not looking over their shoulder has probably attracted him. And you can't argue with that. You know, unfortunately, this is the Everton position. This is where we are. This is where we almost have to resign ourselves to. You know, we're going to have to sign players that are maybe prepared to prove a point by going to a team that, you know, hasn't been great for 2 years and showing that, you know, they can progress us and step us forward. But those players won't be at Everton in 2 or 3 years. And that's the bit that sort of hits home and hurts a little bit. We've also been linked with Brobby, Brian Brobby, the striker. He's got a little bit of everything. He's got a little bit of pace. He can be a bit snide from some of the videos I've seen. I'm not going to pretend I've watched loads of him because I haven't. But he seems to be a player that can cause problems, can be aggressive when needed, can carry the ball, can score a goal. He's quick. None of that is a negative. But Everton seem to be going for this type of forward. You know, all the forward players we're being linked with are quick, strong, aggressive when needed. Know where the goal is. Young players, players who can prove a point. We just need to sign one of them. We've been linked with, I think he's Dia. We've been linked with Toure. We've been linked with Brobby. We are continually linked with Gnonto. Albeit Gnonto, you could argue, is probably a sort of left forward. All of these players are pace merchants, bit of skill, bit of quality. And it's great to be linked with them, but Everton clearly financially are struggling because they can't, you know, we're not lashing this money on the table for them. You're not hearing Everton outlandish bids. You know, we've been 15 million for Gnonto, well, we got 8 for Ellie Sims. You know, so if you're putting it in perspective like that, Everton are a long way away from spending lots of money, which is a shame, but we are where we are. And this is what I'm saying. We're almost bargain basement at this point. We've paid a £3 million loan fee for Danjuma. I don't have an issue with that. 38 games, so £3 million. Again, we are where we are. I don't think it's a bad signing at all. I think you've got to get players like... Neil Maupay off the book. And every video I feel like I'm digging him out, and I'm not. I'm not digging out work rate. I'm not digging out personality. I'm not digging out his attitude. I'm not digging out any of that. You know, we saw it last season. What game was it? Was it the Bournemouth game? He was warming up and he celebrated as if like he'd scored a goal when Everton scored. He's not playing, but he had the right attitude, and I'm never gonna disrespect a player for that. But they're not good enough, and that is, you know, that's where we are. We've also loaned out 2 young players, Lewis Wellington and Stanley Mills, both gone out on loan. Well, Plymouth Argyle have got Wellington, and I don't think that's a bad move. He was the one last night in that second half that I felt like he was composed on the ball. I was really impressed with Higgs as well. Good feet. Onyango, it was good to see him play. Kiarte. There is some good young Everton players. There really is. It's just whether they get opportunities in the first team. Lewis Darby looked quick and aggressive in the game. It'd be nice to not see him on loan and see him get some minutes in the first team. But there was a few young players last night where I sat there and thought, you know what? They're decent footballers. One of the things they've got to learn is set pieces. I mean, the set pieces in the second half from Everton was appalling. There really was, but you've got some really good, talented young footballers there, and it'd be nice to see a couple of them having the opportunity to play in the first team, or, you know, causing little headaches for Dyche, you know, coming into training and working hard. It'd be good to see. Good to see. Other big news, and it's not massive news, but it's rumours. Roma apparently are interested in signing Calvert-Lewin. apparently on loan. I don't think this will happen. I don't think this will happen. I don't think it would be a bad move for Calvert-Lewin, a move away from Everton. But there's no way Everton are going to loan him. It would have to be a permanent transfer, and it would have to be a decent sum of money. You know, we already know we need strikers. We all know that. But if you could get 35 million for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I mean, the problem is, because of his injuries, I don't know if that's a push or not. You know, when he was scoring 15 goals a season 2 years ago, you'd probably say 35 million. You'd probably say that's a bit light. But now, you're probably saying it's probably a bit too much. But if you're going to replace him, you've got to spend that sort of money. And we wouldn't need to replace him with one. We'd have to replace him with two. And you'd probably end up keeping Neil Maupay as well. So, Everton definitely need something. They need something. There needs to be a catalyst. I thought the catalyst would be Declan Rice going to Arsenal, and I did think Onana would end up at West Ham. But none of that has materialised. And also, he played last night, and he didn't quite seem at the races, if I'm being honest, Onana. I didn't think, he didn't fill me with confidence. I like Onana, I like his attitude, and I know he can, you know, he's came across sometimes as a little bit showmanship in terms of the, you know, the getting the crowd up and cheering the crowd to do things. But I quite like that. It's just a personal preference. I get there's fans that don't, but I like that. And I do think we'd miss that. But if you offered me £60 million for Onana, I'd probably snap your hand off. Well, there's no probably. I would snap your hand off. I think there's some real. I think there's real talent in there. I just don't know if Everton's the right club for him right now. I do think he could play in Europe. I think he looks really good for the Belgium national team. I'm sure he could. I'm sure he could step up. But, you know, like Gomez, these are players that have or had the potential to be fantastic. And I am worried that Everton, just like with Gomez, hasn't been the right fit for Onana. You know, like Gomez, you know, I was talking about the game last night. He was all right. There'll be lots of Everton fans that were saying he was poor. I'm sort of giving him the benefit of the doubt because it's his first game back for a long time, and, well, in a blue shirt, and, you know, he didn't leave on great terms, really. Because his performances were pretty shoddy. So, you know, I do worry. I do worry about players like Onana falling down that path. Yeah, I think that's about it, really. I don't think there's much else, and I don't think there's any point really talking about the game last night. One thing I will add. There won't be any Bolton fans that watch this video, but I tell you what, right, that Santos, Ricardo Santos, I think he was, centre-half, he was absolutely magnificent last night. And bearing in mind, this is a team that, no disrespect to in a lower division to Everton, etc., he played really well. He played really well. I thought he commanded. He would be the last man. He would put the foot in. He sort of did a bit of everything yesterday, and I was really, really impressed with him. I was impressed with a few of the Bolton players, if I'm being honest. I think they'll have a good season, and I have nothing against Bolton, so I hope they have a good season. But yeah, I was quite impressed with the lad. Actually, I was quite impressed with him. But yeah, I don't think you can read much from the friendlies, you know, the Stoke, and I think the Sporting Lisbon. I don't think there's much to read from them. There's not been many goals in these games. Defensively, we've looked all right, but yes, we also at times in those games have looked ropey. I thought Ben Godfrey did a decent job as the sort of senior centre half certainly in that second half, but it's again, that's another player. You know, a player that you signed for decent money, come in, really impressed me at the start, and just appears to have fallen off. Mason Holgate's another one. You know, when we signed him, he came into the team after about a season or so, and I thought, yes, this kid has got it. I actually thought he was better than Stones. What a mistake that was. You know, these are players that you sign and you get really overhyped about, and they just, you know, they just don't end up making it or cutting the mustard, and it's disappointing. But I do think, look, I think if you was to tell me where do Everton finish right now, I still think we lack firepower, and I still think we go down. That's being absolutely transparent. But there's definitely time to change that. You know, there's definitely time to change that. I like the fact that we've signed Danjuma. I think Everton are overkilling it on the social stuff now. It's a loan signing. It's not like we've just signed Messi. You know, it's a loan signing from Villarreal. It's not an absolute blockbuster, but yet every Everton post of training is of Arnaut Danjuma. I think the other one as well, I'd like to see Calvert-Lewin, I'd like to see Danjuma, I'd like to see McNeil, I'd like to see the three of them. And then it's just midfield. You've got to fix the midfield, because you know, Garn, we know, I'm just going to call him Jimmy Garn. We know he's a good player. We know he is. You know, he got player of the tournament at the under-21s. He's a very talented footballer. He's got a brain. But we need people around him who can do the sort of leg work. And, you know, I worry about Garner's legs. I worry about Onana positionally. And then you're coming onto a back four that, if I'm being honest, has no pace. Ashley Young already showed why he's a better left back, and it made me laugh. It made me laugh. All the sort of dogs abuse and the comments about Ashley Young being finished, and I just watched, and I had loads of conversations with friends who are Villa fans, and I was saying he literally, it will take 3 games for him to change people's opinion, because he is better than what people give him credit for. He's actually progressed backwards from being that left winger and that left forward. He's progressed backwards. But this is a guy that can still whip a really good ball in, can still beat a man, can track back. Defensively, he's fairly sound. He's better than Mykolenko. I mean, we can sit here and sugarcoat it as much as we want, but he is better than Mykolenko, and we spent £25 million on him. So, you know, he's another player that I think will probably start games. He is experienced, but I'm really getting concerned about the back four and how slow they are. Michael Keane's not great, we know that. I mean, it's the one criticism I have of Dosh. I just don't rate Michael Keane, and I haven't rated him for a long time. Yet he's playing. I don't get it. I don't get it. He needs to have an absolute blockbuster season to convince me otherwise, which I'm not saying he's not capable of. Jordan Pickford did it 2.5 years ago. I was finished with Pickford. I was done. He come back, he matured, he proved me wrong, and for the last 2 seasons, he's been arguably our best player. So, I'm not writing him off, but I still don't think he's going to be good enough. Tarkowski, I think he's a very solid centre half, but there's definitely a mistake in there. And I worry about Patterson because of his injuries. I worry about Patterson because of his injuries, and then the follow-up to that is Seamus Coleman. So yeah, I do worry in that sense. But look, we are where we are. There's no negatives. We've just got to strengthen. We've got to strengthen, and if we don't strengthen, then look, as I say, if you was to say the season ends tomorrow, where are you going to finish? I'll go 19th. I really do. Because I just think there's a complete lack of firepower. I'm not saying we won't keep clean sheets. We'll draw lots of games. We just won't score enough goals. That has to be addressed. And you can't go into the 3rd season in this situation without having goals and and we've got to get goals. We've got to get goals, and there's got to be a player that comes in that can score goals. I'm not saying Danjuma won't score goals, but I don't think he'll score you 15 goals, and I don't think there's anyone else in the Everton team that will get anywhere near that number. I think Danjuma probably scores 7 or 8. I think McNeil probably chips in with 4 or 5, maybe 6. I think Iwobi probably gets 1. I think your centre halves between them probably get 5. And then you're looking at other goals from other areas. How many goals is that? How many goals have I just listed? 30? Less than 30? It's nowhere near enough to keep you in the Premier League. We need a goal scorer. We need a goal scorer. Someone who will get you a minimum of 10. Sign me. That simple. Guys, look, I'm leaving it there. We have to keep smiling. It's been a rough summer so far, but I do feel like the cogs are starting to turn. And the positive is, you know, it's not far away from the season starting, and there's always that buzz. You know, first game of the season, back at Goodison, Fulham at home. There is no greater feeling. So, look, guys, I'm leaving it there. Keep smiling. Up the toffees.